other day, Allison was like trying to shoot off. I said, hi, ma'am.
Next year.
So, Jason, you know, I told you I interviewed for the job on Thursday at Firestone Ford. Well, they said, we'll probably call you Monday.
Just the
And
one.
two different calls
You only get
today.
one, don't you?
And I didn't look
My
at the
chair's
phone
fine.
either time. I just answered. I was disappointed both times. One of them was the city thing about, you know, extreme heat warning. I'm like, I already know that.
Thank you. Mic's on, everybody? Okay. Good evening. I'll now call to order the work session of the Richland Hills City Council. The time is 6:12. Item 1A is discussion of the items listed on tonight's City Council agenda. No formal action will be taken during the work session. Each action item will be considered during the regular session. Jason, are there some things you want to discuss tonight?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
So just to clarify, we wanted to go through these consent agenda items real quick for you. So obviously the minutes, self-explanatory. The ratification of the certified appraisal roll as well as the maximum tax rate. Those were just to ensure that what you voted on at the last meeting are on the record. And that was just due to kind of a redundancy built in so that if there was ever a challenge that you guys didn't, you know, vote on those two things, that we've got it covered here. There's also the adoption of a Title VI, and Lisa will give that presentation or discussion of what that is during that item. That's new business, I believe. And then you'll have the three public hearings related to the budget. So the CCPD budget, RHDC, and then the overall city budget. And I do want to clarify on the citywide budget, you're not voting necessarily on the approval of the budget. You're voting, you will be voting, you'll hold a public hearing, and then you will actually vote to schedule that vote or adoption to the August 24th meeting. So on the slide, when we get to that item, I've put a motion for you to say that Elizabeth helped me with. So I just have it on the slide, so anybody that wants to read that, if that's good for you guys, that's what we would ask you to do. Any questions on this? And then I would like to go through the budget on some changes, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure, let's do.
Okay. So when we presented budgets to you last council meeting, we were proposing that you set the maximum rate, which was the de minimis rate. And then after visiting with our finance team and looking at more of a deep dive onto how can we pull some levers now, because we want to protect, you know, residents' pocketbooks going forward and into next year, let's look at other options. And so I'm going to pass out a tax rate sheet. If you don't mind, pass one down. And this will show you what different proposed rates would yield in terms of operating impacts, as well as what does it look like to a resident. So what you proposed is that the maximum tax rate was the de minimis, and that's what it says on the top. De minimis proposal was 60 cents, 60.9494. And that's what, again, the de minimis rate is something the state allows cities under 30,000 population to utilize that would take the no new revenue, M&O rate, plus 500, whatever rate it would, that would yield $500,000 in new revenue, plus your INS rate. So that's where the 60 cents. So our current total rate right now is 50 cents. So we looked at different options. So if you, instead of going up that 10 cents, if you go up to Voter approval rate, there's also a 7 cent, there's an 8 cent, and a 9 cent. Those are all under the de minimis rate. What we're gonna be proposing to you tonight is the voter approval rate. And so that's the maximum rate at which you can increase revenue without an automatic election or a petitioned election. And that's what the state gives cities the ability to go up 3.5% of revenue based off of the no new revenue. So what does that do? That's if you look at this line, it says operating result. When we had the de minimis proposal, we had a general fund, because remember, this is the M&O portion of the tax rate. So based off of the tax values that you've approved the certified roll on, multiply that by the maintenance and operations portion of the rate. And then we have a 98.5% collection rate on that. So that's how we come up with the revenue. When you use the de minimis rate, you had about a $48,000 surplus in the general fund, and that would just flow back into fund balance. If you go up to the 7 cent option, which is above the voter approval rate, you have about a $262,000 deficit. And if you drop down to the voter approval rate, you're at about a $314,000 deficit. So that just means you're bringing in $314,000 less in revenue than what you're expending out of the general fund. So if you go back to the RHDC budget that was just approved, 314 is what we're using to pull out of the general fund to pay for those things in the RHDC fund. So that covers your costs. So now you're back to zero. You've got a balanced budget. So we can do that and use the voter approval rate to produce a balanced budget and to get you through fiscal year 27. That would minimize impacts to homeowners. And so what we look at, we have to look at like a median home value. And then we look at what the current rate is compared to some of the other like proposed rates, the voter approval rate, de minimis rate. The voter approval rate, does yield to the non-exempt over 65, so just a resident that's under 65 that doesn't have any other exemptions, disability or veteran exemptions. So the city portion of the tax rate would generate on an average home about $1,300, $1,371 for a homeowner for the city portion of property taxes. Annually, yes, for that proposed tax year. With the de minimis option, it was over $1,400 for that. So it's a $200 difference in annual cost to that resident or business. Proportionately, businesses are also paying that tax without any exemptions. We're also looking, the reason we were wanting to look at this was we are going to see utility increases, water and sewer from Fort Worth and TRA. They have to do major capital projects just to handle our inflow of water and our outflow of sewer. And these are regional systems. It's not just Richland Hills. Every city that's a wholesale customer of Fort Worth is picking up that pass-through cost. Same with TRA, anyone that passes sewer through TRA, and we also have sewer that goes back to Fort Worth. So we have two sewers, and then we supplement water with a portion of our own wells that we pump. So we're at least able to absorb some of those costs without, taking the full hit of a Fort Worth increase. So with those increases, there will likely be some pass-through expenses that we have to evaluate on the utility fund side. And so we wanted to make sure that we were minimizing the property tax impact. So before I go any further, I just want to make sure I can answer any questions related to that if there are any.
So if I'm understanding correctly, we're reducing this down by about $200, but we know that we're gonna see an increase of water and sewer, hopefully something less than 200, and that
Absolutely.
netting out basically at zero for the residents, so that, if we didn't do that, they'd be taking a hit more than 200.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily have to increase water and sewer rates. I mean, we have available cash that can offset those expenses, like, or at least absorb some of the shock. I will tell you, I think we mentioned at the last meeting, City of Fort Worth is going up 15% in water sale and 18% in sewer.
Yep.
And Kelly, what was TRA? Was it 3.5%?
Yes, it was just over 3%.
Just over 3% with TRA for sewer. So, those are fees that we typically, hold in the pass-through line of our utilities. And just for clarification, when you get your water bill, every one of you gets a water bill, we don't have the ability to break down pass-through rate, volumetric rate. When we switch to our new ERP, we will have that. Vicki, that's correct. We can break down the bills.
Good.
So we'll be able to show you what an example bill looks
I think
like,
that's
but then
really
that
cool.
way you can see, this is the pass-through rates, this is your volume that you've used, so that if you decide, well, I can control the volume, people will be able to see that a little bit more
Yeah.
clearly. If you have the Eyes on Water, you can see that now, and this would be a plug to sign up for that if you haven't already. But you can monitor what your water usage is now.
So, Fort Worth's told all their wholesale customers they're doing this. Have they given detailed reasons as to why?
Yeah, so we sit on the advisory committee. We also have half associates that sits on that as well. And so there's all the cities that are members of that program are in there. And so we are hearing kind of their cases, just like with Encore and Atmos and
Yep.
Right.
all of the others. We're also on the steering committees for those. So as everyone's cost across the country is going up, there's still some inflation. Cost of services, cost of goods, those are going up, but it's also to do with capital projects and the cost for those.
I assume that will come up on a future agenda, since that's not
Absolutely.
necessarily here for us to.
Well, I only bring it up just because I wanted to just say, when we do have that discussion, that needs to be part of it, just so, for us to be transparent, because people are, whatever we raise it, people aren't gonna be happy, so.
Right.
We'll have to say this is why Fort Worth's doing it,
Understood, yeah. And we will have a utility, like a fee, when we do the comprehensive fee schedule that we'll bring back to you, that'll include that study. So if you go back to Wildan, which was the consulting
Sure.
firm that did the last rate study a couple years ago, they had built-in increases based on some of the known costs, plus your capital projects. We've kind of paused some of that because we didn't go out and issue debt, so we haven't had any increases recently because of that. But there was still some planned increases to cover those pass-through costs. So it won't go up as significant unless you needed to go replace a major line somewhere. But we'll have that broken out for you so you can see what the cost is for Fort Worth and TRA. I was gonna open up the budget real quick, Mayor, if that's okay, to
Yes,
show
please
you
do.
the general
Yep.
fund, or the overall fund. So this is, this screen is showing the revision that we made for what the revenue looks like for your property tax revenue at the voter approval rate and how we calculated that. So it's 908 million in taxable value. And I think on this tax rate sheet, it shows you that every additional cent of M&O generates about $89,500 per year. So that's what 1 penny gets you, up or down. So if you think about it that way. So as we go, because we almost have $1 billion in values. Now what this doesn't account for is that frozen property revenue in that 908. So that's where this 494,000. Again, the appraisal district gives us that number. They say based on your tax ceilings and frozen values, this is the revenue that you can expect from those properties. So total revenue of 4.3 million in our property tax side. So I had a couple questions about the fund balances, and what was proposed if we have, if we're under or over. So the general fund is showing to be 0%. So we are right at a balance, proposing a balanced budget here. The utility fund, it's also balanced, but we are gonna be using $145,000 of cash, and that's just to absorb that. Now, you can go in, if you decided to increase rates, that number would come down potentially, or offset it with the drop of expenditures. But this is your enterprise fund, and so it's gotta run like a business. You know, you can't spend more than you bring in, so we would use cash to offset some of those. And there are some one-time capital costs in here.
What are the column headers on this?
Yeah, can you turn those white maybe?
Oh, yeah, it's a PDF.
It's,
Can you
It's
read
the
them?
fiscal
yeah,
year,
yeah, fiscal year
It's just the
revenue and
fiscal year, I'm sorry.
expenses.
revenue expenses.
Yeah, so this is,
26 revenue.
this is our 26 revenue, 26 expenses, 27 revenue, 27 expenses, and then this is revenues minus expenses.
For 27. Okay.
So this is just like all the funds, the summary. Where you see like RHDC, you know, this was us using that one-time fund balance for the 567,000. Vehicle replacement fund, that's just as we're transferring money in, we have funds that are in there today that we may not be spending all that for lease payments, especially if we have equity that's built in when we trade in vehicles. The crime control district, we talked about that's using 608,000 of fund balance. The Keep Richland Hills Beautiful, this is just taking what's in the fund balance because that program is somewhat defunct. But you have funding in there for landscape maintenance that was still available that you can use and that you've used in the past and under this fund. Hotel motel fund, there are some principal and interest that comes out of this as well. But you still have 61,000. Those can also pay for special events instead of the RHDC. The TIF fund shows this negative because we're not putting any more money and we're closing it out, so that closes that fund out. Link operations, that one is actually 37,000. We have a negative balance showing for the last year, and so that's kind of a carryover. But again, that's like an enterprise, so we can't run a deficit in there, so we would need to transfer funds to cover that or reduce so what we do is just reduce those expenditures. ARPA funds, you got to spend those funds before the end of December this calendar year. And so there's capital that's programmed for that with broadband.
Yes.
The Strategic Initiatives Fund, you see the 1 million going into the fund. That was from the TIF, so we're putting that money into strategic initiatives. You have funding coming out of strategic initiatives for the the ERP, Tyler. So as we're switching the financial software from STW to Tyler, that's where that's being paid out of. And you already have a fund balance around $2 million in the strategic initiative, so this is adding to that. And then special events is a zero balance. So total funds, you know, we're looking at 25 million in revenue, 26 million in expenses, so that's using fund balances across the board at 1.5 million across all the funds. Happy to go into any fund or line item that you wish. Is there any specific items you'd like to look at? departments, this column says Department for General Fund. This is fiscal year '24 actuals, fiscal year '25 actuals, what was adopted in '26, and then what our proposed budget is in '27. The change over here on the right is between '26 and '27.
So on community compliance, it's not going up very much, but you know what that's for?
Well, let me drill down
It's a
into
real
it.
small amount, but
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
It might be an increase to cover abatements. We were trying to,
Well, that's what I'm hoping it was.
Streets. Community development. Was it code compliance or community development?
code compliance.
Code compliance, yeah.
Community, here we go.
Community.
So right now, we do have
Yeah,
a position that was hired this
Salary.
last year,
yeah,
but we also have a frozen position.
okay.
And so that doesn't necessarily have to be filled at this point in time, but it is something that we kept in there. But there is there's K, animal control, but also code enforcement, who is the manager over that department. And then Lewis is code enforcement, backs up animal control. So they're cross-trained. And then we have another cat that does our animal control, but also an admin person that is being trained right now under community compliance, so we'll be able to have that function. So those are funded positions. Then we have another code officer who has recently moved to the police department, and so that position is the
Right.
one that we've kind of held frozen.
Okay.
What is the employee allowance line item? Is it negative 27?
So there was some training inside that. So this is our proposed budget. It went,
Yeah.
dropped down. We also will use, if the city issues phone, like a cell phone or things like that, or certifications.
All right, thanks.
One of the things, just to remind you, on the debt service fund, in order to keep the INS rate where we tried to keep it as close as it is today, is we are applying, Vicki, do you recall, is it 150,000 of fund balance? There's about $700,000 in fund balance in the debt service fund. And you may ask, why do you have a fund balance in there? Well, when we're calculating the property tax for the INS rate, the state does not allow us to calculate the frozen properties. So what happens is you can only calculate off of that 908 million, but the frozen people are still paying their portion, right? It's just not something that they let you calculate into the equation. So there's $75,000, $80,000 that still gets paid from those properties, and that just adds up every year. So we have to be able to make the debt payment work with that 908 million number without taking into account the frozen properties. Did I explain that right?
Did very well.
All right.
So that's where the debt service fund is. I'm happy to jump in. Anything else anybody wants to see?
I'm good.
No, I think,
Anybody else have anything? Okay. All right, we're gonna, if there's no need for an executive session by anybody with the city attorney, then we'll just move on and just, in this work session. Do we need to pause for a minute? Okay, very good. Does anybody need to take a break? Okay,
I'm good.
we'll move on.
Roland's chair still standing.
Oh, no, poor guy. All right, welcome everybody to the Richland Hills City Council regular meeting for 2017-2026. The time is now 6:36. Thanks to everybody for coming in and joining us and joining online. Call the meeting to order. So if y'all will please stand for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States flag and Texas flag. We're going to first start off with a moment of silence for Judge Bass, who passed away this week, and Councilmember Athena Campbell will lead us in prayer after that. All right. All right, thank you, everyone.
Our Father God, we come before you not to ask for ourselves, but to acknowledge that every good thing has its roots in your wisdom greater than ours. Grant us the ability to hear your will with clear minds and honest hearts, the ability to listen as much as we speak, and act with humility rather than certainty. Offer us decisions that will touch others with care. Keep us mindful that our work is, at its best, an act of service. May protection be with you all, from God our Father and from our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Pledge of allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Do we have anybody for citizen comments tonight? Okay, we'll move on. We'll now move to council comments. Does anybody have anything? We're not going to do community interest this week. We'll save it for next week, but anybody have anything? Okay, we'll move on to that, from that then. We'll now consider the consent agenda items on the consent agenda are considered routine and may be approved with one motion unless a council member or citizen requests that an item be removed for separate discussion. Item 8A is approval of the minutes from the August 10th, 2026 City Council regular meeting. Item 8B is ratification of the city's acceptance of the 2026 certified appraisal roll and related under review value estimates for fiscal year 2027 and tax year 2026. Item 8C is ratification of the record vote proposing a maximum ad valorem tax rate for tax year 2026 and fiscal year 2027 and setting August 24th, 2026 as the date for the public hearing and vote on tax rate adoption. Does anybody want to remove any of these items? Okay. Hearing none, the suggested motion is I move to approve consent agenda items 8A through 8C as presented, and I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay,
Second.
are there all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Excuse me. Couldn't get very water, y'all. Item 9 is resolution number 663-26, adopting the City of Richland Hills Title VI Non-Discrimination Plan, authorizing its implementation, administration, and updates, and authorizing execution of related Title VI assurances and documents. Jason, can you present this item?
Yes, sir. And I'll lean on Lisa's help if needed, but between our many TxDOT projects that we have, so anytime you receive federal funding, there's federal guidelines that you have to agree to. I think we all know, if you're familiar with Civil Rights Act 1964, Title VI, these are things where we don't hire or discriminate based off of race, sex, in those items, but we don't, while we have that policy at the local level, we need to adopt the TxDOT approved policy. And so that's what this resolution is formally doing. We have what's called a desk review or desk audit tomorrow. And so we need to be able to show them that council has approved a Title VI plan. And so Lisa and Val with our HR department have put this together using templates and resources from the state. So this is, what you're considering tonight is more of a routine item, but we wanted to make sure it was on your new business if you have any questions to discuss.
This doesn't have any impact on employees or the cost?
Correct.
Just, okay.
Right.
Y'all have anything else?
No.
Okay, very good. All right, the suggested motion tonight is I move to approve resolution number 663-26, adopting the City of Richland Hills Title VI non-discrimination plan as presented. And is there a motion?
I make some motion, Mayor, we adopted as you stated it.
Second.
Okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll now open the public hearing on item 10A concerning approval of and adoption of the fiscal year 2027 Crime Control and Prevention District item, or budget. Public hearing is open at 6:42. Jason, can you present this item?
Yes, sir. So as you witnessed in the CCPD meeting, as this is the CCPD board, we do have fiscal year 27 revenues estimated at 1.5 million in sales tax with 32,000 in interest income, with expenditures at 2.141 million. That is a 6% change over fiscal year 26. That includes salary adjustments for the 95% of market. Also, just a slight increase in shared services. Chief, do you recall what that, was there a percentage increase in shared services this year? It was fairly flat for us compared to other
good.
4 cities.
I think the overall shared services for communications and jail actually went down a little bit. It's the combined shared services for mental health and crime analyst and the other shared services that we have. I think that's really where the increase, not so much on usage for dispatch and jail. And then there were some other entries in there for equipment. So overall services, I think, was actually down a little bit, but some other costs.
Okay. And that is with other cities having to increase some things on their end, so that was good for us. We are planning, this does include a planned use of $608,892 in fund balance or cash, available cash, to offset the difference between revenues and expenditures. Mayor, I'll answer any questions you guys have.
Anybody have any questions? Are there any speakers for this? Okay. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing at 6:44. All right, suggested motion is I move to approve and adopt the fiscal year 2027 Crime Control and Prevention District budget as presented. Anybody like to make a motion?
I move we approve as presented.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll now move on to the, open the public hearing on item 10B concerning approval and adoption of the fiscal year 2027 Richland Hills Development Corporation budget. The public hearing is now opened at 6:45. Jason, can you present this item?
Yes, sir. So also this, earlier this evening, you witnessed the RHDC approved their budget during this process. We are projecting the 4B, Type B sales tax coming in at $870,000, with the remaining coming in from interest income to a total of $905,000 in revenues. Because of the Rosebud Park improvements, our expenditures do exceed the revenues this year, so we will be using fund balance in the amount of $567,678. That's also to cover costs that were originally in the general fund, such as the link subsidy of $150,000, as well as about $314,000 in the Parks and Recreation departments. happy to answer any questions on this budget.
Have any questions?
No, no, no.
Okay. Is there anybody that wishes to speak on this item? All right, seeing no one, I'll now close the public hearing at 6:46. The suggested motion is I move to approve and adopt the fiscal year 2027 Richland Hills Development Corporation budget as presented. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion
Mayor,
to approve.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you.
Well, and beat you with this.
We'll now move on to open the public hearing on item 10C concerning the fiscal year 2027 proposed annual budget. The public hearing is now open at 6:47. Jason?
Yes, sir.
Please present this.
So as discussed during work session, we're showing you, we've got 19 separate funds. And that's something that is not unusual for cities to have that many different funds, but is something that we'll look at going forward and maybe clean up with Vicky's help. Couple items of mention is there are some uses of fund balance, as we talked about with the CCPD, with the RHDC, with the utility fund, to use available cash to offset the differences. We did, you formally closed the TIF fund, Richland Hills Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone, number 1 at the last meeting. So those funds will go into the strategic initiatives. When we were talking over the summer about, how we were going to approach the budget, we did believe at that time that we may need to tap into the Strategic Initiatives Fund to offset some cost. So with this, we are not. We're keeping that. That's your fund to use for one-time projects or expenses going forward. And so we just want to make sure you know we're not using that at this point, other than the couple capital items that are coming out. But with that TIF fund moving in, that's over $1 million. That is adding to your substantial balance that you have in that fund. For the general fund, when we look at the 90-day reserve, that's about $2.57 million. So we're projecting an ending balance of 3.67. So you also have a fairly healthy general fund balance. That helps you, again, with one-time costs that could come up or to absorb. So you'll notice this was an interesting slide, I think, to a couple of you, where the sales tax was our larger share in the general fund, and it's now the second place. But what we're proposing, and this is a weird calculation, because what happens on the property tax side is overall values went down. But then we had some new construction, but when the values go down, that M&O rate and the way that we have to calculate the rate from the state ends up going up more. So that's where like a percent increase, if you were looking at it that way, looks higher, because the values went down so far. So to get back to the no new revenue, it's actually going up in total tax rate. So what you see here is the difference, sales tax and property tax kind of swapping places. We also have, when we talk about like vehicle replacement fund and other franchise, not vehicle replacement, the Encore, Atmos, they're all paying franchise fees to use the right-of-way. Most cities also charge themselves on the utility fund side in that, like a franchise fee. So in the utility fund between water and sewer, there's $215,000, which represents 5% of expenditures that's in the general fund as far as the revenue goes. Then the other revenues will go up. On your August 24th agenda, you're going to see an Atmos energy rate proposal. They've come to an agreement like statewide, so all the cities now have to go consider approving their rate structure. And so we'll be posting that tonight for the August 24th meeting as part of your consideration. But that's included, those franchise fees that we get from those entities fall into that category. We've talked about '27 being kind of this unusual year, we're going to understand a lot more clear in the next 2 months where our sales tax lands. We did have a 2.75% increase year over year, so August of '25 to August of '26, if you just look at those 2 months, our sales tax went up. Now, that was with the loss, in 2025, that's when that month was gone of the big taxpayer. And so now we've kind of stabilized and we're seeing a slight increase, so that's good news. We do have a couple of our larger taxpayers that are looking to expand in terms of business operations, so not just physical size, but more markets that they're opening up to. So that'll help likely kind of keep us in the positive growth, even though it's relatively small. But that was big news for us. We did continue to try to reduce expenditures everywhere we looked. One of the things I wanted to be really clear, as we go into October, November, December, we are not stopping looking at our performance and our personnel and what workloads we have. We're going to be doing department audits and personnel audits to ensure that we meet. If you remember back in February of this year when I showed you this expectations equals optimal performance equals actual performance kind of model, we want to make sure that your expectations as a council drive what the budgeted amount of actual work, like production hours, if you will, and then if we're actually producing that. So we have to align what our resources are and what we actually have. So we'll be looking at what each employee is doing to maximize. So we don't have anybody sitting around, and I can promise you that's not the case. But just in terms of making sure that we're not putting too much on one person or position also. So it looks at kind of both things. We have a lot of folks that are what I call utility players. They can do just about anything. We have a lot of motivated individuals, and so that's very helpful. We also don't want to run them thin and ragged, so that's where we'll be looking at that in a lot of detail.
Yeah. The more somebody can do, the more you give them, right?
Yeah. Most of these folks.
Don't tell them that, they'll
understand
slow down.
It's okay. They like doing it.
That's the nature of the beast we have.
It's in their
That's
nature
good.
to do more.
Yeah.
So, good.
Enterprise infrastructure fund, so you've got your utility fund, your street maintenance fund. Now, we have sales tax that's coming into the street department there, or the street maintenance, the road and street sales tax. 1.275 million. The majority of that would go towards mill and overlay based off of the street categorizations that Kelly's put together. That doesn't include utilities or anything like that. This is just pavement, surface. There's also sidewalk, curb and gutter, drive approaches. Like, there's things that we have to come in and fix when we're doing mill and overlays still. So there's kind of a 300,000 or so for those miscellaneous, and then $1 million for like street, curb and gutter. And so he's working with the county right now, Precinct 3 Maintenance Department with Tarrant County on kind of putting together a schedule and timeline and basically a budget to see how many streets can we actually get done with that $1 million. We also have a pretty healthy fund balance in that fund, and so we can based on where those numbers come in and how many streets, we may be able to add to those streets as well. So we would have to come back to you for those projects as we move forward. Oil and gas, we're still getting revenue from our leases that we have on the oil and gas side. And so right now, we've just got landscape maintenance that comes out of there. But you do have a pretty healthy fund balance that we paused the Safe Routes to School to help more on the general fund side, but the oil and gas was paying for the design. So you pause that. We actually are using that to front the IT equipment that when we did the refresh, we're using that money to pay for it, and then we get reimbursed with the tax notes that we'll sell. So the oil and gas will actually have funding in there. You can use that for just about anything.
So they have a fund balance, right? Right
There
now,
is.
89,000 or something.
Yeah, it's Well, if you take once the fiscal year '26 closes out, that's about what we'd have after the IT, but when we replenish and reimburse, because you did a reimbursement resolution, we'll reimburse those dollars, and so you'll have over $500,000 in that fund.
Oh, nice, okay.
So proposed tax rate based off of this budget is the voter approval rate. So this is your picture of that with the median home values. Any questions on this one?
I'm glad you were able to cut some expenses too to get to this, so that's helpful.
I mean, like I said, this was a tough budget year,
Yeah, it is.
and with, I think, revenues decreasing 17% or so on RHTC, 26% on it was really tough, and now this proposed rate, trying to bring it down from what we had talked about, the de minimis, which our citizens will take a big hit, and you coming back with something that can help us, really appreciate that.
Sure.
You did good. You did good.
Good.
They did good.
Oh, and everybody.
Staff,
And everybody.
excellent.
Thank you, though. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Just as a reminder, this is not a vote for approving the budget tonight. You're just going to be, you see the motion on the screen. Did I write that? So you're scheduling the vote for August 24th, 6:30 at City Hall, 3200 Diana Drive, just, you know. But what's on the screen, if somebody or the mayor, if you read that, that's what we were looking for tonight.
Okay, very good.
Mayor, I'll get it.
Do y'all have anything else though before?
No.
I've got one note. We've got, the Wi-Fi is in that fund that is gonna end this year. That project isn't gonna get done on time. So we're gonna have to make sure we get that Wi-Fi turned up so we don't lose those funds.
Are you saying in the ARPA?
Yeah,
In the ARPA fund?
the ARPA fund,
Okay.
yes. Thank you.
I'll visit with Vicki on how we do that, but
Yeah.
with the Strategic Initiatives Fund, that's at least an opportunity to cover if we needed to.
I don't wanna lose a dime.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right, yeah, for sure.
yeah. Spending the, you're saying just spending the ARPA fund?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
At least buy all the materials and then you can pay
Oh,
for
I see what you're
installation
saying.
out of
Yeah.
different funds, so. Right,
Yeah.
okay. All right, John,
All right,
Mayor, we need to do the public hearing.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
We opened the public hearing, so.
Yes, just
yeah.
if anyone wants to come up.
Does anybody else want to come up for the public hearing? Thank you, appreciate it, Elizabeth. All right, if not, I'll close the public hearing at 6:59.
all right, Mayor, I make a motion to schedule a vote for the adoption of this proposed budget on August 24th, 2026 at 6:30 PM here at City Hall.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Well, that's all, folks. The meeting is adjourned. Oh, 6:59. Starting to trend a little bit.
Yeah. When we have a long night, we're all gonna be disappointed.
Oh, no.
No,